Hi, welcome to Lecture 4, Part 1. This serves as the introduction and overview of objectives and student outcomes for Unit 4, differences between learning criteria, formative and summative, and task completion grading practices. This module in particular, I know that most of you are probably like, I already know about formative and summative assessments, but I wanted to really walk you through the process of what it means to actually use these things. So in this unit, remember that grading is made up of summative and formative and task completion activities that all aim to teach necessary skills for the content or grade level. If we ineffectively use any of these things, so if we substitute formative assessments for summatives, or if we don't consider the sense making process and the tasks, the performance tasks that students have to do in order to show that they understand material, then we are really defeating the purpose of our assessment process. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a better understanding of how to use these. At the end of this, I'm hoping that you have a firmer grasp of the difference between formative, summative, and task-oriented grade practices. And task-oriented grading practices fall under performance tasks or things that students are doing prior to the summative. And then diverse methods of assessing skills and recording grades at the elementary and secondary level. So there is no separation until week 5 of the difference between secondary and elementary. However, within this module, you'll see a blending of different resources for everything. So by the end, I hope that you are better at differentiating formative and summative and task learning processes within your classrooms in order to better reflect learned skills in academic reports. So the whole thing is about, getting better at how we assess and also indicate what students have learned. So there seems to be a lot of readings this week, but there are not. Most of these are actual, there's only one reading. These are resources. The reason why you want these resources is because, for the final, you'll have to make some adjustments to the way in which you assess your students and then align that with the current practices that you have. So this serves as additional resources also for the midterm. You may want to use some of the phrases or reshape some of your activities to fit into the formative and summative ideals. So also they're good for professional resources in regards to you teaching. It's not often that people always have a lot of ideas in regards to formative and summative assessments. So by the end of this week is pretty simple. There is obviously the midterm project, which is due April the 7th, and then reflection 2, which will be different. I want you to go back and think about who you are as a grader now that you've looked at some of the different things within modules 1 through 4. So you've seen stories about or a story about CCSD's processes of grading and the variants of how the 0 through 59 or bottom F is used. You've read different things about models to use to assess students. And then this week, it's kind of like putting it all together. So if you can reimagine yourself as a grader, if grading or assessing was your only profession, who would you be? So within Padlet, you're just adding to the conversation, and I'll post it at the end, but it's fairly simple. So final thoughts. By the end of this unit, there's some things I want you to consider reviewing your current gradebook. So the only way that this course will be, I think, most significant is if you actually take the time to review the things that make your classroom what it is. And your assessments are one of the key things, including classroom management and then your ability to reflect on your practices. So consider looking back at your gradebook and actually start to separate things. List your formative assessments, list your summative assessments, and then compare your list to the readings and what there's mentioning as both. And then I want you to think about this question: what do you believe you need to improve? So we all stand in a space where we are instructors, or we are facilitators of the process of acquiring new knowledge. So one of the things I always do is I'm never afraid to reflect and also try to improve the practices that I embark on when I'm in a classroom. So I encourage you to take up those same things. I know you're super busy, but really think about what do you need to improve in regards to your grading practices as they align to the district's policy and also your school's policy. Because this serves to be important, especially if you want to start answering questions like why isn't the student doing as well, or why can't this group of students ever progress. A lot of it has to do with how we're assessing them and then how we're setting up our grade books. Okay, that's it for this. This sessions are very simple. The next one is literally just a emphasis on the important things that are in the first article, and then we look at some of the resources. So it will not take you that long to get through any of the material this week.